Hello, hello, hello. It's Knits for Sanity, and welcome to part 5, or the last part of my Mitered Square tutorial. Today's final lesson really has little to do with Mitered Squares itself and more to do with finishing off your completed project, whatever that may be. All right, for starters, this was my demo piece. It has not been blocked or anything yet, but what we'll be covering today is weaving in ends. We'll be discussing how to hide holes. If you have some holes on the front side of your fabric that you feel are just maybe a little bit larger than what you would like them to be. And then we will briefly go over how to add on a double or treble crochet edge. All right, so my demo piece here, I have already done most all of it. I've woven in most of the ends, and I've already added my crochet border. It does sit a little funny right now. That would all be worked out with blocking. As you can see, there is plenty of stretch to this item. So it'd be very, very easy to block it into a nice shape. And that's part of the reason why I like using natural fiber yarns, is because blocking is always an option to help just make your knitting look that much tidier. Okay, so what I have here is I have left the yarn ends that come from where squares meet up in the center here, just to demonstrate. So on the front side of this square, there is a little bit of a hole right here where your black square begins. If it's not a large hole, but if it's enough that it bothers you, it is super easy to fix that when you're weaving in your ends by simply attaching your yarn needle to whatever color square it is that you're trying to hide that hole. Going to take your yarn needle. Now you don't want to grab this edge stitch, because all that that's going to do is actually pull your hole more this way and create a hole somewhere else, and it's not going to look quite right. Instead, you're going to want to go in on the back side of one of these purl bumps, okay? So we're going to go in through the back side of one of those purl bumps. Hopefully you can see how I did that. So my purl bump is right here, and I drew my yarn through that. All right, now when you turn it over, you can see that hole is now gone. After you've done that, you're just going to keep going along the purl bumps. You will pull your yarn not tight, but match it with the tension of your fabric as best as possible. After you weave in through several purl bumps, you will go back through and weave over top of yourself on those same purl bumps, only 2-3 stitches back. Cut your yarn, presto. That hole is now taken care of on the front side of your fabric. It is not there anymore. All right, on this side, we have a little bit of a hole on this side over here, on the pink side especially. So we will practice the same type of thing. We have pink yarn over here. Actually, both sides looks like could use maybe a little bit of finishing. So we will do that. Again, we'll put our yarn needle over our yarn to try and capture up this hole a little bit on this side. It's really not much of one, but if it's enough that it's bothering you, I would actually go in through the seam stitches here, pull that a little bit tight, and that has now taken care of that hole. We're going to carefully travel over to our square over here. And by doing that, we're going to pick up stitches just that are located on the back side of this fabric Whenever possible, always going through the same color yarn. And then when we reach the other side of our square here, again, picking up stitches, purl bumps, using the same color yarn whenever possible. And that should take care of it. And it does. Hole is gone. So now over here, we're going to pick up purl bumps again. Just weaving back and forth. Try and always use same color yarn as the tail that you're weaving in with. Go back over yourself, just 2 or 3 stitches. And cut. All right. So that now leaves just these last 2. There is not really a hole present with either of these on the front side, but if you really want to make sure of that, again, what you can do is take this yarn, again, go through a purl bump on the back side. This one, you might want to go down a little ways to get enough purl bumps. Never pull your yarn tight. Try and match the tension of your item. I'm going to show you a little trick. If you get to the point where you're like, I don't know if I may be pulling it too tight, always you can move your fabric like this, and that will then let the tail that you've been weaving in rest a little bit. It will get pulled to the same tension as the rest of the item that you have been working on. And that's something else you can do that before you even cut your yarn. You know, just pull it a little bit, and if your tension for weaving in that end is really, really off, it will pull that yarn tail to the same tension as the rest of your knitting. And we will quickly do this one. And again, over here, the temptation would be, because of where this yarn tail is, that you'd want to do light pink purl bumps to weave it in. Don't do that. Bring it back over to the other square so your pinks match. Weave in here. Then go back over last few stitches that you've done. And again, if you're worried about tension, just give it a few tugs right there and snip it. All right. So now this piece is done, other than having to block it. But as you can see, we've now taken care of our holes on the front side of this garment. So there are no more holes present. This is a finished piece other than blocking, which that is perhaps a video that I will save for a completely different time. Or there are plenty of other tutorials, but essentially how I would block this, because this is made out of wool yarn, I would put this into very, very hot water with a little bit of soap. If you don't have like a special delicate yarn soap, a couple drops of regular human hair shampoo will also work. Just drop it in there. Let it soak for several minutes. If your fabric is dirty, let's say you were knitting at the park or knitting while snacking and your fabric has actually gotten dirty, I'd let it soak for probably a good 20 minutes. Otherwise, if your fabric should be pretty clean, really just a 5 to 10 minute soak is ample, just enough to really get these fibers to bloom under that hot water. This is the important part, because it is wool. It will felt if you do a lot of agitation to it. So that's not what you want to do. When it's in the water, you're just going to take it and scrunch it up like this a little bit. You may need to wear gloves if your water is very, very hot. You'll just scrunch it up like that. When it is done, you will lift it from the water. You will squeeze You will never, ever, ever wring. Don't ever do this because that will felt your fabrics. But just squeezing to get out that excess water, you're only going to squeeze, and then you can roll it in between towels. And once you have as much excess water out of it as you can get without squeezing and agitating these fabrics, these fibers to felt them, then you can get your pins, lay it out flat onto any surface that you can use pins on. Sometimes people use mattresses. You can actually buy little foam boards, whatever will work that you can stick pins into. And then you will just lay this out and pin it into shape and let it air dry. If you happen to live in a sunny spot right now, you could stick it outside. It will be dry very fast. So that's just my very brief oral tutorial on blocking an item. All right, so this is my sample piece. On my sample piece, I have woven in a couple ends already, but I wanted to leave a few things here. So first, I wanted to look at, what about ends? Where your square is on the outside and you have a yarn tail coming off from an end. How can we close this off and make it look nice? So here we have this pink tail coming off from this pink square on this edge. How can we help make this look nice? Gonna thread our yarn onto our yarn needle. Kind of examine your garment. As you can see, this is kind of where it comes in at. So we're going to actually go into the back of this purl bump there. And that will help secure that and keep it nice on the front side of the fabric. Once that's done, you're going to do the same thing again. Weave in these purl bumps on the back side of the garment. Go back on yourself. Pull your fabric a few times if you are not sure about your tension. Snip. All right. Down here, we have, this was where a square finished. So we have small knot on the end with our yarn. How can we help make this look a little bit nicer? There are actually several ways to do this, one of which is finishing off your garment slightly differently, but we didn't do that. So now we're going to have to do post-op. So it's already been done. What can we do now? Again, looking carefully at your knot here, you're going to look back and you're going to find a purl bump on the back side here. That is not one that's on the front. It's on the back side only. You're going to pull your yarn down and through there a little bit. And then on the front side, that should look pretty natural now. Okay. And again, on the edge, because we're on the edge, what I would maybe recommend doing is just traveling down a few purl bumps to get to an area where there are more purl bumps available. Again, do not pull your yarn too tight. Try and let it match the tension of your fabric. Something else you may want to consider doing if you are very nervous about weaving in your ends and having them be exposed or pulling through, block your item first and then weave in ends. If you do struggle with tension, or if you are a real perfectionist, I would actually block your item first and then do your ends at the end. All right, so that should give you a really good idea of how we're weaving in our ends. I'm going to quickly go through and do these last three. We'll speed the video up. All right, I am done. So my little demo piece here is now completed. How do we get this cute little double or treble crochet border on it? In America, we call this a double crochet. Other parts of the world, it is called a treble. I am not a crocheter, so I feel that I need to say that very clearly up front. I just know how to put on a cute little border, and that's really about it. But I will show you how to do that. I like to start right after a edge to pick up and start a border here is what I like to do. I just feel that it hides it a little bit better. So I'm going to pick, much like when you pick up stitches, do you see how there are two legs of a stitch right here? That is where I'm going to start. We're going to pick up that whole side. We're going to wrap just a little loop around my crochet hook, pull it through, and then I need to create a small chain. So to do that, you're just going to wrap it around, pull it through, do that 1, 2, 3 times. Now, a little note about the crochet hook size to use. Often people do have a different tension between knitting and crochet. If your crochet tension is tighter, which is generally the case, I believe, I would go up 1 hook size from what your needle size was. So if you're using a 3.5 or 3.5 millimeter size knitting needle, go up to a 4 millimeter crochet hook. Alternatively, if your crochet tends to be a more relaxed tension, I would go down a needle size, so just do the reverse. Or if you really have no clue, just stick with the same size knitting needle that you used when you knit your original sample. So if you used a 4 millimeter needle to knit, just try using a 4 millimeter crochet hook to add on your border. Again, a lot of this can also be worked out in blocking. If for some reason it does flare a little bit, it's better to go slightly larger than too snug with a border. So once you've chained 3, then we're going to start and work our way down. So again, we're going to look ahead, much like when we pick up our stitches, and we'll see that right here. Oops, not right there. Right here is where we're going to pick up our next 2. Okay, so plait that ahead. You're going to wrap your yarn around 1 time, so you have like 2 on there right now. Poke your yarn through, wrap it around again, pull it through. You have like 3 loops on your hook. You're going to wrap your yarn around, pull your hook through the first 2 stitches, pull your hook through the last 2 stitches. 1 is done. Wrap your yarn around your hook, look ahead, pull it through, wrap your yarn around your hook, pull it through underneath those stitches, wrap your yarn around, pull it through the first 2 stitches on your needle, then pull it through the second 2 stitches on your needle. Looking ahead, figure out where you're going to put your crochet hook again, or wrap your yarn around, stick your hook through, wrap the yarn around, pull it underneath that stitch, wrap your yarn around, pull it through the first 2 stitches on your needle or hook, and then wrap your yarn around and pull it through the last 2 stitches on your hook. And we're going to keep doing this, wrapping the yarn around, looking ahead, pulling it through, 2 and 2. Okay, so I'm going to speed this up until we get to the corner, and then I will talk to you about how we do a corner. All right, so here we are. We are on the edge of our corner now. To smooth the transition around this edge, we're actually going to want to do a couple of extra stitches through the same hole to help compensate for the more surface area that you need to cover in order to go around the edge of your item. So to do that, we are going to find ourselves a hole in here. It is hard because of the decreases that we have. So much like when you were looking for where to pick up your stitches, we're going to do the same thing here. There is a spot there where you will be able to pick up a stitch with the two legs. Okay. Stick your needle through there probably one time first, then wrap your yarn around and stick your needle back through. Pull it through, then through two, through one. You're going to wrap your yarn around your hook again. You're going to stick it through the same spot that you just did and do the same double crochet again through that same spot on your fabric. All right. Then I would go through and do that one more time. Oops, first I got to wrap my yarn around. Go through that same spot for a third time. And wrap it through. Now I can continue going around the other way. Again, it's still a little bit tight, so I like to stick my hook through first, pull it out, and then wrap my yarn around and stick my hook back through. We'll get a couple stitches out here, and then I will show you what that corner looks like better. We'll do one more. All right. So what I did with having the three stitches on the corner there is I did allow for more surface area to be created so that it would go around the corner nicely. All right, so you're going to work your way around your whole garment, remembering on the corners to do about 3 stitches into the same edge piece or edge stitch, just to compensate for the added surface area that you need to go around your corners. And then when I'm done, we'll meet back up here and I will just show you how I finish off this border. So I'm going to speed this up and I will talk to you when I'm done. All right, I am back. I have gone all the way around. I did 3 stitches into the corner of every corner. Again, that just eases that corner nicely. When you get back to where you began, you'll have your final loop. Cut your yarn. You're gonna start off totally normal, bind it off totally normal. Then I use a yarn needle. Put my tail onto my yarn needle. And then I look at here, where I began. And I'm going to count to the top of this double or treble, my original chain. So this was my original stitch I picked up. 1, 2, 3. This is the top of the chain. I'm going to go through the front of that stitch, pull it together. Then on the back side, I will go down through, it kind of looks like a purl bump on the back. And that will make it look secure and pretty much unnoticeable from the front side of your garment, okay? Then to have this safely travel down to weave in your ends, just go down through the back like so. And now you can weave in your ends. Back here, because of how I picked up to do my crochet chain, I have a nice fat back to this side. So I can very easily go through even the green on the back here. I can also go through the black. And then come back up just a little bit. With crochet, your biggest thing is you just want to be able to hide those ends in a little bit, because crochet is all knots on the front. It's not as big of a deal about how you do that. All right, so, and then, you know, I'd just weave in that last chain, but otherwise, this is now a completed item. When picking up for your crochet edging, if you are not sure where you're putting your crochet hook through, just go back to the tutorials where we talked about picking up stitches. You're going to pick up your crochet chain, those exact same locations. So you have done this before when you've picked up stitches to knit your additional mitered squares. You will do the same thing for that's where you will pick up to crochet on your chain. That's the biggest question that I tend to get is, how do I know where I am picking up for that crochet chain? It's the same place that you'd be picking up stitches to do more mitered squares, okay? All right, so this square is now done. It just requires some blocking if that's what I want to do with it. It is also set up and ready for if you would like to sew on a backing to this, you could definitely do that as well. That does conclude this particular tutorial on mitered squares. If you have other questions or comments, please write those below. I'd absolutely love to hear from you. Once again, I am not sponsored or affiliated with any company in particular. This is just me sharing knitting knowledge. And I do feel the need to emphasize again, I am not a crocheter. I am a knitter. So crochet questions that you may leave for me, I may not be able to help you, but I will certainly point you in a direction to somebody who will be able to provide you with the assistance that you need. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. It is my subscribers that really help me keep moving forward and continue producing tutorials like this. As I always say, please just practice kindness to everyone around you. You never know what anyone is going through. So it's just easier to just be kind. And in return, I hope that you have a sincerely wonderful and blessed day. And I will see you again real soon.